The Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Seydi, has stressed the need for Africa to look more inward and take ownership of its resources to put the continent on a sound development trajectory. The Vice President was speaking in South Africa, where she represented President Jammeh at the inauguration ceremonies of President Jacob Zuma. Keba Diba traveled with the Vice President and now reports.
In their multitude, South Africans converged on the Union Buildings grounds in Pretoria to celebrate another milestone in a comparatively new democracy, ushered in by a bloody and protracted struggle nearly 2 decades ago. A symbol of that struggle, the father of the nation, the rallying point even in death. One T-shirt campaign slogan simply reads, "Do it for Madiba and vote ANC." And they did in grand style. Jacob Zuma, in an inaugural speech, called for unity, understanding, tolerance, and reconciliation. His vision, a strong, prosperous, and influential South Africa, a major player on the continental and global stage. This called for radical social and economic transformation in a society where polarization is cross-cutting and sometimes deep. This rainbow nation and its future lie in the ability of its people to work together to move South Africa forward. In Zuma's own words, together they will be able to become stronger and to overcome their challenges. Apartheid is no more, but the promises of freedom and democracy, of a brighter and prosperous future, still remains elusive for most of the majority of the country's black population. The Black Empowerment Project has been a painfully slow yet delicate undertaking. Zuma's new 5-year mandate and indeed his 2030 vision place a high premium on this proposition. In a multiracial setup as complex as South Africa's, this may be subject to different interpretations, but for its architects, the affirmative action is just, right, and a process of economic standardization, delicate as it may be.
He said he's going to continue to work on healing. He said there's still racism and segregation. He still has to do with the land tenure issue. Because the land, generally, the blacks are not, land is not accessible to them as it should. And yet, but he has to be careful the way he handles it. He doesn't want any kind of backlash, as it were. But he'll continue impressing on that. Black economic empowerment, he also raised that as an issue that he's going to work on. Poverty, he said definitely they've made a lot of progress, but there's still poverty in South Africa. He mentioned that. He said therefore the issue of poverty has to be addressed, because that's the very reason why they put him in office. That's the very reason why they supported the ANC over the apartheid regime.
The Mandela charm and the ANC factor are influential, if not decisive, parameters in South African politics. Even the young, including the post-apartheid generation, put their trust in the ANC, optimistic about the future of their country.
Joe, I'm so happy. I don't know what to say. I'm so happy, like I don't know what to say.
I'm so happy. That's all I can say, yes.
This part and parcel of South Africa, ANC, that's it.
What you see here is quite a great day, and of course a lot of people in South Africa and the rest of Africa, they are celebrating, and it is quite a momentous moment for our country.
Just a distance away from the Union Buildings is the University of South Africa, UNISA, the venue of a public lecture on the sidelines of the inaugural ceremonies. It was the 5th annual Thabo Mbeki Foundation Africa Day lecture on the theme Defining the Leadership Paradigm for a New Africa. The lecture was delivered by eminent Tanzanian diplomat and international statesman, Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim. Dr. Salim called for a frank assessment of the continent's post-independence era in respect of the promises of greater economic and social prosperity. The sort of transformation from the dark continent to a continent of light, of economic and political clout on the global stage. The contradiction and the seeming paradox.
Soul-searching questions which we as Africans need to ask ourselves. Why is it a continent which is one of the richest, if not the richest, in terms of resources, both human and material, continues to have the poorest people? How can we rationally explain the continued and in some cases escalating internal conflicts in some parts of our continent with attendant losses of millions of lives, human misery and destruction, as well as forcing millions of our people to vote with their feet? How do we erase the image of a continent where corruption is considered endemic? How do we sustain and better utilize the current decade-old achievements of economic growth into a shared prosperity for all. Indeed, some of our leaders in Africa, including you, President Zeki, have characterized the 21st century as Africa's century. I believe that this is possible, desirable, achievable, and most of all, necessary.
For Dr. Salim, Africa needs a new narrative, but a narrative of an African renaissance, to be inspired by a new breed of African leaders, committed to a united Africa, free from corruption, capable of reflecting on the path that led the continent to its present predicament, ready to take ownership of its own resources and remain true servants of the people, and able to empower women and strengthen institutional capacity, and capable of connecting in an increasingly globalized world. The Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Njie Sedi, is convinced that her boss's language is not only being heard and understood, but is being spoken, and spoken well now.
If you want really, Keba, to have a human encyclopedia in the first instance, President Jammeh, he said it all. These are key issues he raised. Absolutely. He's always been telling his colleagues at the AU, in ECOWAS, at the UN, in all fora. He's always said that Africa is in dire need of leadership. Yes, there are a good breed of African leaders definitely cropping up, like him. Those who were born after independence, would I say. They were not part of the problem because they were born after independence. They found the problem there. As a young man when he was 29, he was the leader of our country. A young man with a lot of vision, with a lot of passion, for development. And today we are seeing the results on the ground. He said Africa is not in need of resources. In fact, we have any resource you can think of in the world. Africa has more of it than any other continent. So why don't we have fair prices for our resources? That's what the president is saying. If I own the resources because they're under my soil or whatever, I think I should have the right to determine the price. It should not be determined from without. And that is what is happening to Africa.
For the young generation of South Africans, the future is promising despite the challenges of today.
I'm very optimistic, and I loved one of the principles he mentioned. He spoke about localizing and connecting. I think that's what Africa needs.
Africa is one of the richest continents in the world, and our leaders should start investing in their young ones, to ensure that we put right processes in place, and especially building institutions and, investing in education to ensure that, we have those right leaders in position.
Standing here as a woman, having attended this lecture, I feel I'm very confident in my ability now to move forward as a young person, and not necessarily as a woman, but as a young African leader who can positively effect change in my community and in Africa at large.
As Zuma took the oath for a new 5-year mandate, he is certain that this resource-endowed country is not yet out of the woods. The next 5 years will be crucial in respect of the ANC's Black Empowerment Initiative and Zuma's Vision 2030 agenda. For Africa, the new narrative is yet to be narrated. Kebadiba, GR.
4 African First Ladies from Comoros, Senegal, Nigeria and Burundi have arrived in the country ahead of the crucial Women Advancement Africa Forum to be hosted in the Gambia. In this first of reports on the orders of the arrival at the Banjul International Airport, Babukar Kamara tells us more on the Comoros First Ladies' arrival.
Touching base ahead of a 3-day international forum in Banjul is arrival of the First Lady of the Union of Comoros, Her Excellency Hadija Aboubakar Ayudine.
I am very happy for the warm reception accorded to me and my delegation upon arrival. The forum is very important and we look forward to attending it.
Welcome at the foot of the aircraft amidst a tight security setup and escorted with due prominence of her pedigree. African First Ladies are converging in Banjul on the crucial Women Advancement Africa Forum, aiming to advocate for the advancement of women beyond the 2015 MDG goals.
I want to take the opportunity to thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Chief Professor Dr. Ahadi Ejiji Jammeh, and the First Lady of the Republic of the Gambia, Madam Zainab Yahya Jammeh, for giving us the permission and accepting to host the first ladies that are coming here to join the Women Advancement Forum.